So my number one is The Lunchbox from 2013, directed by Ritesh Batra, starring Irfan Khan, Nimrat Kaur, Nawazuddin Siddiqui. Quick logline: a mistaken delivery in Mumbai's famously efficient lunchbox delivery system connects a young housewife to an older man in the dusk of his life as they build a fantasy world together through notes in the lunchbox. That's a very good description, actually. That's exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I put this movie on my list because we've talked about, food being a way for people to come together, families to come together, for people to, experience sexual desire or awkwardness and truth telling, all of that. And I think the last bit for me, which I think is probably the most important, is just connection, with people you know or you don't know. And food is such a key part of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It instantly does that. At the core of even all the movies that we've talked about so far, there might be other layers that display like awkwardness or desire, but at the most basic level, it is about human connection. That's why we do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie really personifies that because in this scenario, these people don't even meet until a very long time. And all this connection is just happening through food because these people find each other in phases of their lives where there isn't much meaning. There's
Mm-hmm.
loneliness. In Irfan's case, there's actual literal loneliness because he has nobody in his life. His wife died.
Mm-hmm.
In case of Nimrat's situation, she has a daughter, she has a husband, but the husband seems initially kind of detached and checked out, just very self-involved. But then it's revealed later that he's having an affair,
Mm-hmm.
and the daughter is still very young, has her own child life of going to school and such. And the only connection she has is with this lady who lives upstairs in their building that she talks to. I don't even know if they hang out ever together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just this act of making food, and then this food reaching Irfan Khan and him experiencing how delicious it is, and the love and the warmth that comes through it that gives him meaning. And
Mm-hmm.
then his responses to what he's feeling from this food gives her meaning because she's not getting any of that. She's trying to connect to her husband through food by changing the recipes or trying out a different dish, which of course don't reach him because this whole mistaken identity of the box. But
Mm-hmm.
she gets nothing from the husband. But yeah, before I keep going on about this, had you watched this movie before?
No, I hadn't seen it or heard of it before. I thought it was
Oh,
really delightful of a film. Like it was a simple, nice story with a lot of good messages, especially around like food being, like you said, the central theme of either having connections with people or not. And I think, like you just mentioned with
yeah.
the wife, there's scenes where the wife cooked dinner for the husband and they're all just her and her husband and her child are sitting around, but her husband's watching TV and like barely even the food could just be anything. And he's not seeing that as a sign of love or connection, much like she's trying to do that to him and connect with him over the food. And he's completely ignoring her. And yes, we later find out he's having an affair, but he's not even paying attention to the food. And then I also like that parallel story of the guy and his coworker, where also them,
Mhm.
he was kind of annoyed with his coworker. Oh, I have to train you on this thing. Like, whatever. I don't really care. He's giving him kind of the cold shoulder. But then as they start sharing meals together with the food that the wife is cooking for him, but just sitting down and talking and becoming actually really good friends to the point where then he gets invited over to his coworker's house to again share a meal. And it's that bond over food brings them together in the same way that the romance starts developing between the two main characters. But even with the friend, I thought that was really cool to see
Yeah.
that develop too, because I do believe that food does connect one another, and having meals can create friendships of just having meals. I mean, hell, that's how our friendship started, actually.
I was just gonna say it
I
was
just,
one of the best meals I've had, A, because the food was good, but more importantly, because we became instant friends, which
right.
was, and I think food had a lot to do with it because we
Mm-hmm.
could instantly appreciate and admire it, and but also get lost in our lives and each other's, histories and stories. It's all kind of part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think this movie just does a great job of capturing that. Though, because of I think it said in the summary, the famous sort of lunchbox delivery
Mm,
method. I was like, I don't know what this. It took me a while to figure out exactly what was going on because I was
Right.
just culturally like, I don't know what. Wait, there's a delivery service, but is it supposed to go to him? Is it supposed to be someone anonymous? And actually, to like Google while the movie was going, I'm like, what's supposed to be happening? Oh, that okay. To kind of like
Yeah.
figure it out in the first 10 minutes. Just again, culturally, I wasn't aware of this thing, even though it sounds pretty neat. Like you get your own home cooked lunch delivered to your desk basically is pretty
Yeah.
impressive. I wish they had that in the States instead
I
of having to
know.
go out to get like Subway or whatever, at work.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I wish they'd done just a little bit of explanation of what this is. I know there's a very famous Harvard Business School like case on this, and they just assume maybe that everybody in the
Mm.
West knows what this is, but
Hmm.
clearly not. So that I think that would have been nice, but you do figure it out
Yeah, no, I figured it
as
out.
you go through. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, but I thought that was really just cool, like learning about an aspect of the Indian culture I was not aware of. That's pretty cool.
yeah. The other thing I also love about this is that you really spend time with the food making and the food eating in this movie, you
Hmm.
know? And it's a very, simple real life slice of life kind of movie. And they could have easily not done that and just, focused on the environments or the people. And they do all of that. You get a very detailed sense of his office life, her home life, the city
Hmm.
that they live in, the local trains that he takes with like a bajillion people, and what the to and fro looks like, his lonely home, the children playing in the streets. Like you get a full transportive look of what this life is like. But in
Hmm.
addition to that, you also get a sense of she's preparing these meals and she's experimenting with recipes and what that looks like. And then him enjoying the food. You have these kind of, overhead shots of the thalis that he's preparing as he unravels the tiffin to kind of
Hmm.
bring out all these different things, and how he tastes one thing out of skepticism and but then is delighted, or finds one thing maybe a little bit too salty or what have you. And then on this food thing, then the messaging and the communication layers starts to build. So I just love how they handle that, because this can come off as pretty heavy handed, I think, but it just feels very effortless and delightful. And you as an audience are then waiting, oh, what does she say now? Or what would
Right.
he say? Or what would she send? Would he like the thing that he's cooked for him? Although at the same time, you're also a little bit like, is this right? Because she's married and, could this lead to something more? Or is it just a form of connection? And that's sort of that.
Hmm. Right. And I do like how the movie isn't, I mean, towards the end, it is turning into kind of a romance, but
Right.
it's more, or at least what I thought the first two-thirds of the movie were about, it was more like human bonding and a woman
Right.
who's lonely because she's not getting any affection from her husband, and a man who's lonely because his wife passed away. And there's even a scene
Right.
again with the food where he's looking across the way and sees an opposite apartment with this family sitting down having a great meal
Mhm.
together, sharing a meal, and he's sitting there with his TV dinner. Essentially, no one's
Mhm.
home cooked meal, unlike that family across the way, and it just amplifies the fact of how lonely he is, showing that through the fact that he's eating alone with food that's not home cooked, comparing to this family that's eating together with a freshly cooked meal. So I think they do a very good job of talking about his isolation that way, and it's just two people finding each other, and it's about bonding over food and a little bit flirtatious too, and how they're getting to know each other essentially through the different, oh, this is too salty, he writes back to her, and then she's like, oh, okay, well, let
Mhm.
me try this instead. Oh, maybe you might like this. It's the same way that a couple might start flirting together, but through
Right.
food and through these notes, which I thought was pretty cool. Again, it sort of seemed like a bit of a fairy tale to me, and I like those types of movies where it seems a little, yeah, it's a little heightened and maybe unrealistic in a certain way, but that's part of what this is because there's a nice moral
Right.
to the story. So I really like this film a lot.
Although I feel like this can happen, that's the thing. Like it teeters that line between it is dreamlike and fantastical, but it feels real enough that it
Hmm.
can happen. You can sort of imagine it. The other thing that, as the story goes on, I think the food and then the connection that comes with the food, it ends up, I think, unlocking something in these people
Hmm.
where I think it gives her a lot of confidence that, okay, why am I stuck in this life if I don't really want it or like it? I'm not getting something out of it, and maybe I need to do something else and take like a big step. I guess going to Bhutan or whatever she's planning to go
Hmm.
to, like, that's not going to help with this, or maybe, but to me, it's more about the act of like taking life in your own hands. And same goes for him. Like he's sort of given up, but
Hmm.
like you mentioned, him bringing this other colleague in his sphere and making friends with him is sort of a new thing that unlocks in, gets unlocked in him, which I don't think would have happened without this food from this lady and the connection that they have. The fact that he's starting to, care about his appearance and
Right.
wanting to look good for their first meetup that he ends up not showing up for. It shows that something is getting revitalized, in this lonely man's life who sort of maybe has imagined that this is the end. I'm going to be retiring soon. And that would be that. So I think that's the power of, I guess, food and connection, that it can bring meaning and show you new windows and doors in your life.
No, definitely. Right. It's the maybe not the ultimate form of human connection, but it's, I think, the best, salve we have essentially of being able to form connections with other people. Food really, really helps with that. And I think this movie demonstrates it perfectly. And in each connection, the ones that are connected and the ones that aren't, again, like the husband of the woman, he doesn't really care about he doesn't even know that, he's not getting the right food and does not, because he has no connection to her, and that symbolized that through the food. I also like just visually how they were trying to connect the two main characters through, like swanning. They both like swanning to fly at the same time, or like he's hearing a song on the radio on the bus, and then she's randomly singing it to herself. And I like that kind of like.
I love that you picked up
symbolism.
on that.
That was really cool. It's like, oh, they're connecting
songs
them.
Are, I grew up with that song and such, and it's from the 90s. It's not even current from when the movie is set, probably.
Oh, okay.
It's just an older song on the radio that everybody knows. So I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Yeah, I thought there was a cute way visually of the director connecting these two people before they actually form a connection, by getting the audience ready of, okay, there is something going on here between these two people. Again, that's like fable style of this that I really liked. And I'll just say too, that the food did look great. I was like, oh man, I want some Indian food right now after this movie. They all looked like really really great food.
Yeah, food was great. And then we have to mention the performances, and Irfan Khan, who passed away, I think, last year. He's just so incredible, does so little, and just his eyes and his body language carries it all. And she, who I'd never seen before, and I don't think I've seen anything else that she's been in, kind of really goes toe to toe and is amazing. And Nawazuddin, who's the friend guy, he's kind of become like a big thing in Indian movies and TV. And this was one of his like earlier roles. And you really see like such a good-hearted, down-to-earth person. And there's such a story there, right? Like you've been living in Saudi Arabia somewhere, maybe doing menial sort of jobs, and you've come back here and lives in a small apartment, and is cutting vegetables on his work files so he can save time. And there's just so much detail in the writing, but just also in his performance. It's very moving to me to like look at all these people with not much, but they're making it work. And it's also very symbolic of how I view India as well. I mean, of course, it's hard to distill a giant country with like a bajillion people in one log line, but I think this is a big part of it. Like, life is tough, but you don't have much, but you sort of make it work. It really comes through in this movie.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad you put this on here. It was really fun movie, and I definitely recommend people checking it out. I think it's a fun watch, and just an uplifting, kind of small but sweet tale.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you liked it.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.